Hello, it's Imogen here, and I'm here with my friend and co instructor of Foundations of Regulation and relational neuroscience educator, Shay Seaborne. And we wanted to come on today to talk about a situation that many people find stressful, at least at some level, and that is going to the dentist and sitting in the dentist chair. Maybe for a routine checkup, that's not something you particularly worry about ahead. It's not for me, but there's still something about being in that chair while your teeth are being inspected and prodded and cleaned that can, at the very least, make you tenser than you might want to be. And then, of course, if there's other procedures that are going to be longer and more invasive, that's, takes it to another level. So welcome, Shay. Maybe we just start with like what are I kind of alluded to it. What are things about going to the dentist that make it, maybe some of the things will be very similar to like going for any medical type appointment, but there's also some unique things about a dentist appointment that could make it especially stressful. Let's put it like that. Yeah.
Well, like you say, any medical encounter, there's a one up and one down. There's a power differential, and that automatically puts us in a vulnerable state and can, make us hypervigilant just for that, especially if we have some negative experiences already under our belt.
Right. But now you've said that, I'm thinking that, yes, in any medical appointment, and of course you can, but the particular way in which you are physically organized between you at a dentist
Right.
appointment make it especially so, I think.
Yes, laying down with your mouth open. And as we were discussing just a few minutes ago, that we're actually, while we're being worked on, we're kind of like stuck in a frozen scream.
Yeah.
So that gives our body the signal that something's wrong. When we're holding still, we're not meant to hold still. When we hold still for a long period of time, our body takes that as a cue of danger. And
Yeah.
especially if we're doing the scream and something's happening to us that we might not even know what's happening. We can't see it. We can't talk about it. All we can do is go, and again, we're in that one down position. And also our mouths are very tender and personal. So that just adds layers and layers of
Yeah.
challenges to being in the dentist chair.
Well, I'm thinking about unnatural, allowing another human being to put sharp implements in your mouth while you're awake and
Frozen in a screen.
is not the most relaxing setup. Yeah. And yet, of course, cognitively, we're doing it because we're looking after our health and our teeth and,
We
all
need
of
it.
those
Yes.
things. But it's physiologically, that's not kind of what's being understood by our nervous system, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of cues of danger to our nervous system, being laying down, mouth open, frozen in position, and somebody sticking things in our mouth, sharp things, and maybe drills, the horrible sound. And
Yeah, the sounds too. And even if it's not hurting, even for a cleaning, the scraping and it's like the sounds are unpleasant sounds that we would run away from. Yeah. We also talked about trust, safety, agency, and obviously I hope there's some trust between you and your provider because you are in this vulnerable state. Can you just speak a bit more about those things in this?
Yeah, it's something that the medical industry really doesn't take much account of, that we really need to feel a sense of agency and autonomy to feel safe. We need to feel
Mm,
like we have choices. And that's a big part of what trauma-informed care is. It's making sure the person understands at the experiential level that they have the option to say stop, or I
mm,
want something else, or whatever it is, that they are in charge. And most
mm,
of us automatically kind of default to a passive state when we encounter a medical professional, because that's what our nervous systems are trained to do. To our nervous
yeah.
systems, they're like a substitute parent. And so they have a similar kind of influence and authority that carries more weight, that any interaction with them is going to have a heavier impact on our nervous system because of
Mm,
that power differential.
that makes sense. Um, I'm thinking of some of the things that happen to a lesser or greater degree, um, because of all these things that we've been talking about, is that you might be very tense. You talked
Mm-hmm.
about being frozen, and that's tense. And um, I, if if you can be still and not frozen, um, that would be better. There'd be more chance of not being so tense.
Mm-hmm.
And related to that, like holding the breath. I mean, frozen. I think when we're in that sort of situation, it's very, very understandable and common to hold your breath. But of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's that freezing,
Right. More
and that then
peaceful.
is like all sorts of you know tension in your body, and that's not, let alone that you're in this awkward position that you're then holding in a tense way. But if you could hold it in a little bit lighter, more easeful way, um, that maybe you would feel a little better afterwards, let alone while you're in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a little, even if it's just a little less distressing of an
Mhm.
experience, that's better than all the distress.
Yeah. For me, that's a big thing I do when thankfully, the only dental appointments, knock on wood, that I've had for years have been just my checkups and cleanings. Um, um, but it's like, it's very, notice that I'll start holding my breath, and then I mean, just by noticing that, then that gives me permission to breathe. But there's practices and ways of thinking and being aware that I teach and that we teach together in our courses, that they're not going to solve it. But if you can keep coming back to it, you're not going to be frozen the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. And the more that you implement this, the more you'll have a better experience each time. Well, in
Yeah.
general, there's no guarantee.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, there's like we've been in general talking more about the kind of routine appointments, some of the more invasive dental work that you might have to have done, um, is much more likely, even ahead of time, to be building your fear response, your
mhm,
anxiety about it. And for some people, they have that for any dental appointment, because of
mhm,
past history, etc. But you had a particularly, I don't know, you told me about this 2.5 hour procedure.
mhm,
Was it for an implant or
mhm.
something? Or, yeah, tell us about that, because that's an example. And also contrast it with how you have been in the past prior to that, um,
Mhm. Well,
in
my
the
history
dental.
is to just dissociate almost as soon as I get in the dental chair. Just go off to the ceiling, and I used to tell my dentist, "Okay, so I'm just going to go deep inside, and I'm going to seem like I'm asleep or something, but I'm here and I can hear everything you say. So if you need something, let me know. But other than that, just leave me alone, and I'll be, in my safe place here." And he understood all that. And then as I started learning these
Uh,
practices, go ahead.
I also kind of sad, and then not everyone does this, and this dissociative state comes from having had trauma, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
it, um,
I have a lifetime history of trauma, including a lot of dental work. Most of it was not traumatic, but stressful, and a lot of it. Um, I think if someone knows how to dissociate, which we all do, daydreaming is kind of dissociation.
mhm.
I think probably a lot of people would be surprised at how much they dissociate in the dentist chair. It's a really
Uh-huh.
safe way to be
Mhm.
handled like that. But at the same time, it's stressful on the body. It's a stress response. So if we can reduce our stress load while we're in the dentist chair, then our bodies aren't going to experience that same amount of distress.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because at one point it sounded like, oh, you can do that, just go away, and then that sounds
Yeah,
like,
isn't that great?
oh, I wish I could do that. And of course, it
Yeah,
is a wonderful
survival
coping,
adaptation. Yeah,
survival adaptation. But like you
mhm,
say, actually is a stress response, so
right. If
it's
you
not
can,
ideal.
yeah, if
Yes.
you can avoid having the stress response, that's the best thing.
Yeah. Okay. So
Or if you can,
back to your
yeah,
2.5 hour implant
yeah.
procedure. Yes.
Yeah, so as I started learning these practices and applying them, I found that I was able to be present in the dentist chair. And at first I was doing it just with my regular dentist who I'd gone with for years, and so I felt very comfortable with him, and it was a safe environment to practice, like actually being present. And I found I could be there more and more. And then I had sort of an emergency extraction of a tooth with three-pronged root. So um, and they didn't knock me out. They didn't even ask me about that. They just started breaking this tooth out of my head. Um, and it was a lot of force, surprising. And I was able to kind of step back and observe and go, wow, that's a lot of force, huh? I wonder how many pieces it's going to be, and things like that, rather than focusing on the the sensations that it was causing. And I think some people would focus on the horror of having a tooth, cracked out of their mouth.
Yes, and that's interesting, because so you were present, but it was a particular type of presence, and where your attention was going and how it was. So we often talk in our groups about, kind of cultivating this, kind of having a little bit of space between you and your thought or emotion. It's like you're very present to what's going on, but you're not kind of fully immersed in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's different from dissociation, right? You are
Yes.
present,
Yes.
um, um, but yet you're not taken over by
Right.
the
It's like the
thing.
observer's
Yeah.
mind rather than being immersed in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
practices can help us do that.
Hmm. And if I remember rightly, you were doing the foundational practice that we teach in our Foundations of Regulation course, the cycle,
Mm.
which involves counting to 4 and thinking this particular thought. I'm free to notice ease. Multiple times you kind of cycle through the different fingers of the hands, counting.
Hmm.
And if I remember that you would be doing that and then
Yeah,
go
my
away, and
brain
you
would
come
go,
back and
yeah,
start
right.
again, and
Right. Yeah, I just kept
but it
coming back to the beginning and starting
mhm,
over. It didn't
mhm,
matter that I finished or what
mhm,
step I was on or anything. Just keep coming back, keep coming back. Every time that I noticed I was tense or thinking about something else or feeling anxious, just come back to the practice and start with one. I am free to notice ease. And the time passed, and I felt okay when I left. And there have been other times when, like in an MRI, I come out of an MRI rested.
wow. That's amazing, because of these practices of things like
Right.
the cycle.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just focus
um,
on noticing ease and doing the practice, and it helps me hold still and be present to whatever, commands like hold your breath that I might get, and
mhm.
to not be focused on the closed in space or the noise or, my anxiety about what the results might be or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I come out and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for the little rest."
Which I'm sure is not a typical response for an MRI at all. So even if you don't know the cycle, any practice, any mindful kind of practice that can help you be in that kind of more present, but not kind of taken over by the present, if that makes sense, would be helpful. If you meditate and are used to just observing your breath, that would be the kind of thing that you could do. And then you just keep coming back. The noticing if your mind goes to, oh my God, they've just smashed my tooth. It's like you can come back to noticing so it's that kind of idea of keep coming back.
Right.
Not that you're not going to have any of those stressful, very human, natural responses, but that you don't have to stay immersed in it.
Right.
And you don't have to also go completely away, like you were describing with the dissociation.
Yeah, and in that vein, I want to mention that the last time I went to my dentist, who's wonderful, he's the sweetest, kindest, most attuned dentist I've ever had, and he has a background and interest in neuroscience, so we get along well. He understands what I'm talking about, and even so, last time I went in, he was doing a little grinding on a chip that broke off, and I noticed that I was pretty much resting on my head and my feet. The rest of my body was kind of up in the air.
Like you're holding
like
above. Yeah. I mean, that's that tension. But what I will say is you noticed it because you weren't up in the air. You weren't dissociative.
Yeah.
You noticed it. And then I'm guessing you came down and landed on the and that sort of thing for me is like, and then 5 minutes later I noticed that I'm like not really on the surface, and then you land again, but you're not holding yourself up like that for 2.5 hours or 15 minutes or whatever it is, which would be very stressful on your whole system.
Right, especially for a sustained period. Our bodies aren't meant for that. So even if we can break that distress for just a few seconds, it's going to help our whole nervous system and our brain and give us a slightly better experience.
Yeah. So Shay and I are going to be teaching a free workshop next week on Tuesday, the 21st of January at 11, just an hour free workshop at 11 Eastern. That's part of an Alexander Technique online summit, but anyone can register and anyone can come, and you can attend hours and none of the others or all of the others or anything in between of the other sessions. But if you're interested in what we're saying and the talk of the sort of practices that we're talking about, you'll learn one of them for yourself during that session. And then the week after, actually, our Foundations of Regulation course, which we run usually 3 times a year, starts on the 28th of January. And that's a 6-week online course for people dealing with chronic stress and trauma. And last year, all of the courses filled up. So if that's of interest, do sign up sooner rather than later. There's many spots at the moment, but it's usually this last week that it fills up. So anything else, Shay, that you would like to say?
I'll end with my usual. I highly recommend learning the neurobiology of trauma and recovery, because with just a few terms and concepts, we can greatly improve our quality of life.
Indeed. And what's, I think, so special and helpful about our course is it combines that basic understanding. You don't need to know anything, you know, just an understanding enough so you know what's going on inside you and actually in other people too. It helps us be
Right.
more understanding of
Yeah,
others.
that's the thing. It's just terms and concepts for what we're already experiencing.
Yeah.
And then the light bulb goes off. Oh,
Yeah.
that's why I
Yeah.
feel this way when I'm with that person
Yeah.
or in this type
Yeah.
of encounter.
So is that then paired with learning some practices, some concepts from my kind of Alexander technique background that help support the regulation of your nervous system. So
What's not to like?
what's not to like? So I'll put those links in the comments afterwards. Anyone has any questions, whether you've watched with us or watching the replay, just let us know. All right. Thank you.